Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
I,
Sorry. 1 minute. All right, go ahead.
I would like to call to order the Culture, Climate, and Behavior Committee meeting on Wednesday, March 12th, 2025 at 6:39 p.m. in the boardroom of OPRF High School. Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Alexander. Dr. Applewhite.
Here.
Mr. Brandhorst.
Here.
Wilson, I love you, but I promise you I'll never get your name. Thank you. Mr. Cassell. Ms. Clark. Mr. Davis.
Here.
Ms. Emerson.
Here.
Ms. Grimes.
Here.
Ms. Janney. Ms. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Lamb.
Here.
Dr. Livingston.
Here.
Mr. Muhammad. Mr. Narain.
Present.
Ms. Newman.
Here.
Ms. Parker.
Here.
Mr. Pierce. Ms. Randall. Ms. Kreider. Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Ms. Steffenshaw.
Here.
And Ms. Walters. Okay.
All right, are there any public comments this evening?
None.
I'd like to move to approve the minutes of November 13th, 2024, for Culture, Climate, and Behavior Committee meeting minutes as presented. Are there any corrections or adjustments that need to be made? Can I get a second? Second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Start. Moving on to discussion items, we're going to be looking at the new first draft of the new DEP plan this evening. So Lisa,
Yes. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. The weather kept us away from February, so this is our first time being able to get back together. And this is our annual meeting where we look at the proposed changes to the BEP for school year 2025-2026. Tonight, we're going to go through some different goals that we have in terms of what we're trying to meet with the changes that are being suggested. We will take votes on each of the suggested changes, but we will ask for discussion if there's any discussion to be had because there's any confusion or clarification that's needed. Also, keep in mind that there will be time at the end to speak about those changes that were suggested that did not make the list here, just so that you're aware of some of the things that came up as possible things within our school building that we might want to put in the BEP, but that are not being suggested as changes. And then also, if you have other questions after having gone through the BEP yourself about things that you may or may not see as changes that have been put forth tonight. So we're going to start with the goals. You have a printout of the presentation that's also going to be on the screen. And we're going to begin with the goals, and I'm going to turn this over for the goal part to Mr. Narain.
Good evening, guys. Everybody should have two things. Copy of the slide presentation, which will also be on the screen. We also have a paper copy of the behavior education plan. Do not be alarmed. The 23-24. That is because we are meeting with our sustainability goals, and these were printed last time at a CCB meeting, and we saved them. So nothing changed in this copy from what we currently use this year. I will say, as most of you remember, I joined OPRF in October 2023, and looking at this book and combined with my prior experience, it's a very comprehensive book designed to protect the rights of students, to prevent overzealous teens or any faculty really from over punishing, and especially from putting them on a pathway towards punitive discipline that can be very harmful. And you guys know we spent a lot of time CCB meetings this year and going back to last year, exploring all of the different types of situations that could lead to a disciplinary conversation. And also lead us to suggest some restorative conversations or some intervention that could be used to put the student back on the corrective path. With all of that being said, there actually are not a lot of changes that we're suggesting. looks like a large packet. Most of these would be considered minor tweaks. So I'll go over the goals with you. So the question is, well, why do this at all? We did not do this at the end of last school year. Remember, I was only here for 3/4 of last school year. So after going through a full year of implementation and really digging deep into the behavior education plan, myself and Dean really felt there were some things that could be used to improve the experience of students. Everything should be really about students. So our first goal, this came out of me realizing that there was one particular code that seemed to be overused, and that code is labeled in the behavior education plan as any other serious misconduct not otherwise addressed by the behavior education plan. And that is a dangerous thing to have. It's a necessary thing. But I want to say that last school year, we were doing the data, we ended up with about 40+ incidents in that category. And when we dug down a little deeper to say, well, what are these? We have to go through and read through all of them. We found multiple instances where we could have used one of the other available codes. Or there were things that really didn't exist in the behavior education plan. That is the result of what you're going to get here tonight. We want our data to be accurate. So goal number one is improve the accuracy of our data reporting by adding incident codes that accurately capture misconducts that are occurring more regularly. So if something is happening more frequently, we want that to be captured in our data so that we can not only report out on it. Go ahead.
For those of you following along in the book, any serious misconduct not otherwise addressed is in the disruptive and uncooperative behavior section. So it is you can find it on the very first page of these, when you get to the grid, and it's at the bottom, and you'll see it over here. I just want to make sure that you all have the context for what's being spoken about so that you can find out where it is and place it as Mr. Noreen's talking.
So I am the one that has to speak to the data on multiple pages and the spirit of the board, Linda. And we want to have full transparency. So when you have a category like any other serious misconduct, and that is you're unable to dive deep into what those things are, we're not really presenting everything. But so moving forward, we'd like to be more accurate. But also, in goal number two, we'd like to improve our ability to use that data to determine areas of improvement. That's what data should be used for. So if we have the data to say, hey, this misconduct is occurring more frequently, what are we doing to try to prevent that from happening in the first place? We can do that if we are more accurate at capitalizing the data. So that is again stated in goal number three. So we're going to see reductions in use of any other serious misconduct. We did do a policy change this year, so teams are actually not allowed to use that code anymore unless they have supervisor approval. So everyone has to be more scrutinized before we decide to use that code. And really, the use of that code this year is down to students. And finally, of course, we want to protect student rights by further differentiating the levels at which a dean can respond to certain behavior categories. And you'll see that in some of the items that we discussed. We want to be able to more accurately describe the misconduct. So, for example, if you see something that's listed in the bullying section, and that's the way it appears in the misconduct report, but the nuances of the description would lead you to believe that it wasn't actually bullying or there was some other nuance. Some of the changes would allow us to differentiate that and just be more accurate overall. Okay. Anybody have any questions about the goals before we dive into the items? All right, hopefully you see all of those goals reflected in these as we go through. Some of them are much easier than others. We try to organize these according to categories. So if you are following along in the behavior education plan, we'll be in order. The very first category is, or one of the first categories, I'm sorry, is bullying.
And I do want to just make mention so that we remember in the creation of this document, we were trying very hard to change this from being a document that was all about punishment and more about helping students to correct behavior through education, which is why it's called a behavior education plan. So terms that come out like policing were intentionally left out when we created this book. What I noticed too is as time goes on, we sometimes see things within our building and we will say, why can't we do this? And I have to remind people that we purposely took things out of our book that sounded like policing terms, like battery. Like we have to find other words in the schools to describe what that is because we are not the police and we don't have battery in the school, but we do have some offenses and fighting that come out like that. What are we trying to say instead of using those policing terms? So keep that in mind as we go through different things, because that was an intentional thing when it was created. And I want to make sure we don't slide back into doing things of that nature just because we see circumstances that we may think take effect.
So the first item is the category itself. It's just labeling the book as bullying. And we would like that to coincide with what the board policy actually states, which is bullying at rest. So we would just like to rename the section in both the bullying/harassment. It does come out of the fact that we may have encountered some incidents of harassment and maybe would be quoted correctly and appear correctly to student record. Previously, those might have appeared as any other serious misconduct, and that's just. Lisa, are we going to ask for discussion first, propose a vote, and one by one?
I would do a discussion first, and then we can go by item number, or we can do the item discussion, and then we could do discussion for each item and then vote after each item, whichever way you want it.
A discussion on item one.
Okay. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to perform the vote. Can I have a motion to approve the changes for item one? Description of section is not accurate.
To approve item one, description of sections not accurate.
Exactly. Thank you. All those in favor, we're going to do a voice vote. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. All right, the ayes have it. Motion carries.
Okay, item number two is closely related. Now, this is the bullying and harassment section. We need a new incident code for student harassment. And that again is in alignment with board policy, this time policy 7185. So we would like to add a new incident code that states harassment, which we would like to say specifically does include teen dating violence. And that is according to that policy. This would be, I should mention, one of the things that we will discuss and should discuss is the proposed level. So just really briefly, we'll go over the levels. The little dots next to each of the misconducts are the entryway for a dean to address and determine what intervention we should start with. Items that start at level one should be addressed by the classroom, at the classroom level, if it was a teacher, or with the personnel in the hallway that they were dealing with. Bottom line is for level one, it does not actually flow to the dean. Only items that start at level two go to the dean, and with each of those individual levels, the deans are allowed to then use only interventions that are assigned to each of those levels. So level two, you can have 1 day of municipal reflection. For a level three misconduct, you can have 2 or more days. Once you start getting to a level 4, out of school suspension is a possibility. It doesn't mean it has to be an out of school suspension as we discussed here. And at level 5, you can have a lengthier out of school suspension and even the possibility of expulsion. Important to note is that you must progress through the lowest levels before you can get to higher level. And that happens with key behavior in that same category. So in this particular instance, we are proposing that an incident where a student was found to be harassing another, that start at a level 3, where ISR 2 or more days is a possibility for the dean to stop at level 4. Any discussions?
Is teen dating,
Wait, microphone.
oh, sorry. Is teen dating violence a defined term?
Yes, in that policy. So there's an actual board policy that speaks to teen dating violence that I know because I asked the same question as we were going through this.
Okay.
Yes.
I was just wondering, like, what kind of control do we have over that if it's not happening in the school? Like, I feel like that it's kind of.
That's exactly why I asked you what we're.
Yeah, I would say, There is something called Nexus, which is our jurisdiction, let's say, to address any incident that occurs on school campus if it impacts the educational environment for any students. So we would not have jurisdiction to address it if it did not come back to the building, not affect anybody being able to engage in class. But very often it does, which is why we have many codes in here that may or may not be used. You can only find out about it if somebody is being impacted.
We also do not usurp the police, which means if it's a crime, there's still the recommendation that it gets reported to the police as a crime. And we are dealing with it as a school and how it is affecting the academic environment for those involved. Wanted to just clarify the importance of having harassment in this category. If you check in the policies that are at the back of the book, in what David said was 7180, bullying has a very specific definition. And sometimes when a student or someone is being bothered in a class, the term that comes up is I'm being bullied. But there is a pervasive and severe severity that is necessary in order to say something is bullying, that if you all remember from our breakout sessions we discussed. That is why harassment as a term needs to be there so that we can make sure that we're also addressing people just being bothered or picked on, or or having issues with other people.
May I ask one more question? Is the reason I'm not questioning, I'm just more curious, is it to start with 3 to give a chance for the communication for the work done here, for the restorative practice done here, as opposed to just immediately go to 4, which I think automatically gets you out of school? Is that why you're starting at 3 there?
I think we started at 3 given, we looked at the history of incidents that have occurred and we would say that the vast majority, if not all of them, can be addressed by additional conversation. As you know, throughout the work, out of school suspension doesn't give us that opportunity to intervene. So the deans would usually lean towards beginning with some kind of a learning experience in the ISR analysis. Very rare you could go through the rest of these conducts. It's very rare to find one that starts at a level 4 or 5. There are a few, and most of those are guided by state law, ISD policy.
Is there a module in INR that addresses harassment that students can go through? There's really one.
Third millennium. And Mr. Diggs is speaking to a education tool that we use. It's an online tool called Third Millennium that does different modules for different infractions. And students are participating in that in school reflection when they're in there of their time, so.
Is that accessible to anyone?
Meaning, do we offer anyone within the school that? No.
No.
Mhm.
I just mean, could I look up Third Millennium
Yes.
and see what it is?
Yep, we purchased it. Mhm.
So these modules are just kids sitting in front of a laptop, clicking through.
And
Glad you asked that
Yes,
question. We do have 2 ISR adults. And the day is structured so that part of the day is working through those modules. There is a pre and a post test with each of the modules. So you can't just click through and say I'm done with it. There's also discussion, especially if there are students involved who are part of the same incident or able to interact with each other around the incident. So I think our in-school reflection team does a great job of engaging students so that they're sure that there's some learning after the time.
Can I have a personal anecdote about what a student did for most of her time in the in-school reflection room? I don't know why she went in there, but the next day she comes in and talks to me about it and says, yeah, it's great. I got to play my Switch for like 6 hours straight.
I don't know that particular instance anymore, but I can also point to volumes of other instances that I received reports on what specifically is done and what the students have agreed to. there's a lot of nuances in terms of how many kids are in there and what each kid's individual experience will be. We can't force anything in a certain way. That becomes a concern as well. But that report would go back to the dean in terms of how much we feel like we need to learn from the experience. The other thing that those two adults in this space do for me is that they produce a report that gives me data, which I love, about how many students are in there for what offenses and how many students in there are repeat students. And if they are a repeat student, that i.e. they've been in ISR some time previously that year, are they in there for the same offense? And so we are tracking recidivism through that. You see that the recidivism numbers are low. So the data at least does show us that time in ISR, whether it's the module doing the work, whether it's the person interaction doing the work, or the fact that they have to sit through ISR, is a deterrent to repeat failures.
I do like that question though, and I do think that that's a good point for us to think of as a group, starting now and then also into the future. Because I believe we have a lot of students who come back and report different things on a lot of things. I've heard parents who say, my child says there's a fight every day. And I'm like, okay, there's not a fight every day. We have had fights on campus, but they're not every day. I've had students who will go back to teachers and say, fine, call my dean, they're not gonna do anything to me. These things are not always true in the exact form that they do it. Sometimes children are just upset and they release things to make us think that they're not as upset as they are. And sometimes there's some truth to it. So I do want to find out, like, if a switch was used, like, how long did that happen? But I also know that an hour can feel like 6 hours to a kid too, right? Where they're like, I played all day. Yeah, well, no, just remember you did this and you did this and you did this. So I would love to fact check some of that because I think it's important, so that we can help the students center back on what did you find out to help you not return to that location? Because I'm sure you have another place in life you can play your switch. That doesn't include being in that room on a day you're supposed to be in class. Those are the things I'd like to have us think about and be creative for, to help students always be able to center back on, yeah, I guess I don't have to be in that room to do that.
Are phones allowed in ISR?
They have phone home, and I have heard on the radio myself, like, when they've taken a phone and their kid gets upset and leaves the room and them going to get a kid and bringing them back. So yes, the phone home is used because it's considered an instruction space.
I just also want to add, they use that time, the social workers will access students during that time too. It's really important for them. They do a lot of pull-out work, especially around things like harassment, bullying, teen violence, any of those things would definitely be addressed during that time, during that day.
Any other questions or comments?
Sorry, what was the last proposed level? Was it lower than 3-4? It was, the level didn't change, it's just a naming.
This is,
For item one, there was, just a rename of the section.
But this is item.
those people are two. Two is a brand new, it's brand new.
Oh,
So this is a brand new addition to it.
Thanks.
Mhm. Yes.
So I was looking at the back to see, Mike, okay. So I was looking, at the back for the references to the board policies.
You don't see 185.
Right, 418 or 7180, which is.
So 7180 is there, prevention and response to bullying. They are in order too, so it's right after 7140. I don't know the 7185 is in there because I think we're adding that. We didn't have that. 7185 about the team dating, that had the team dating policy. You see 71. I can count back from how many pages it is. You all see 7180 active search and seizure?
Right here.
And then Lisa, I could pull up 185 on my computer and I can read it out loud. You know. So.
It's not a page, it's not a book.
Just for your reference, I'm gonna read just the first paragraph of the teen and student dating violence prohibited, 7185. Engaging in dating violence that takes place at school, on school property, at school-sponsored activities, or in vehicles used for school-provided transportation is prohibited. For purposes of this policy, the term dating violence occurs whenever a student uses or threatens to use physical, mental, or emotional abuse to control an individual in the dating relationship, or uses or threatens to use sexual violence in the dating relationship. And then there are just some other things that speaks to the superintendent or their designee, how they're going to follow up on that, but that's the basis of that one. So to Sonia's point, it doesn't say specifically about something that happens off campus, but again, Nexus to campus brings that into our purview.
And will the vote encompass the adding the new code and the level,
Yes,
in one vote?
yes.
Thanks.
Mhm.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
I know we've talked about bullying and defining what that looks like. Coming from a student parent advocacy group, if a child comes to us and says, someone pushed me down the stairs, we're gonna say that that's bullying. So what does it look like to define, are we looking for an amount of documentation, an amount of instances? Because we wanna make sure that instead of saying to the parent, well, that's obviously what is that? A level 4, what is that language to say, these amount of instances have occurred, therefore we define it as bullying, because we have, I believe, we have sensitive students. So any incident that they don't feel is fair or feel is unjust will fall underneath that. So how are we defining it to make sure that we're calling a level 3 versus escalating all the way to level 4?
Right, because if that wasn't just an isolated incident of being pushed down the stairs, it would be an inappropriate physical contact. So that would not go under bullying. But if you want to talk more.
Actually, read your book, because we put that in the beginning of the book. So the answer to your questions that we do use the national guidelines. There has to be an investigation whenever there's an allegation of bullying, and actually Dr. Applewhite's office does record those incidents as well, because they have to be reported to the state. So anytime that there's an allegation of bullying, it's taken very seriously. But we put in the actual book, in the section about bullying. Bullying,
It's also listed in 180 in our policy. If you want to go back to where it says definition law, things looking it up. It gives you the 4 things.
the key to the investigation is the harm that was done to the student as well. So severe and persistent. Oh, I can't find it.
Is it the one in the policy too? Because it's in the policy 180.
I found it.
You see it?
I think it's this.
Yeah, I just know, I pulled language from that to put it in front of this.
They're only in it. You did. I think it's. It's actually near our phone home. Language. Sure, it's anti-bullying guidelines.
Yeah, so
I read that book way too much.
You can find your way to flip on.
all right, so the back part of the definition we decided to Linda read is directed toward a student that has or can be reasonably predicted to have the effect of one or more of the following: placing the student in reasonable fear of harm to the student's personal property, causing a substantially detrimental effect on the student's physical or mental health, substantially interfering with the student's academic performance, or substantially interfering with the student's ability to participate in or benefit from the services, activities, and privileges provided by the school. So again, besides looking at whether it's a one-off instance, they're looking at one of those 4 things being satisfied as well. Really looking at the long-lasting effects that this potentially have on the student if they are being bullied. Also want to note that the specific example that you gave, that could also be easily categorized as in the category of inappropriate physical contact, physical attack against the student, right? So deans do have to judge when they are going to take something that's an allegation of bullying, they are the incident. They receive the incident, sorry, what's the term?
Incident,
The officers,
the deans?
complaint manager.
Oh, complaint managers, yes, for the formal complaint.
Yep. Because they take those complaints and have to go through a training to determine that.
Just another question, I can see this, definitions from 105 ILCS. Is that just for schools or is that?
Illinois State Code.
Yes,
State
statute
code
for school code, yep.
Only for schools, not for. Any other,
Illinois State Board of Education.
Yep, ISBE. And that doesn't mean they haven't adopted and shared this with other government agencies, but the way it's written there is it's Illinois school code. Mhm.
A question, just understanding the call out on the teen dating violence policy for this item. But it doesn't, it's not called out for other items, is that just because if it's a physical attack, that's just a different level and you pick that instead of,
Anything else?
yeah.
I think it's just to make sure that it's highlighting the fact that we have it as a board policy. Teen dating violence specifically is a board policy, and so making sure that that language gets into the book.
Right, but it applies to more than just that. The way it was read, when you read it, right?
Yes, yes. Mhm.
I'm just so curious, other people who work here would know this, how do you investigate this? Are there cameras in the hall? Like if there are cameras in the hall, so you can go back and look.
Yes,
Oh,
very
okay.
good campus.
Very good cameras, that just that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if there are any more comments, I would like to move to approve the post change of adding a new incident code for harassment, including teen dating violence. See policy 7. That's 715. Second. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Well, the other one really not gonna be as heavy as that one. This item number 3 is really to help the deans separate something that happens in a classroom. So going down to the category of disruptive, uncooperative behaviors, deans are sticklers, and that first code, as it's written in your book, says behavior that disrupts instruction. And they very often encounter behavior that happens in the hallway where no instruction is occurring, or in the cafeteria, again, where no instruction is occurring. And to avoid, having our data be inaccurate again, they would simply like a code that speaks to that, and it would go as follows: behavior that disrupts non-classroom spaces, for example, the hallway, cafeteria, field house, student resource center, etc. Would like to note that this does not apply to verbal interactions. So, for example, there are, and the reason for that is because there are other codes that would address verbal as a threat or some other types of verbal interactions. But so an example could be a kid who decides to climb up on top of a lunchroom table and jump across. That's a disruption. Kids may feel unsafe in the cafeteria. The dean would like to address it and maybe report it so it doesn't happen again. Currently don't technically have a code that addresses it.
Discussion.
Did it apply to extracurriculars too?
I think all of these would apply in any school space.
And a reminder that the students, when they're in the school or on approved field trips, are always held to the behavior education plan. So if they go on a field trip and jump on a table over there, it would also apply.
Just a question, so if it's not on a field trip, and it happens in the hallway or the cafeteria, or space like that, does it automatically go to level 2, since it's not, level 1 is classroom managed, so it's not.
We interpret classroom managed to be handled by the adults who is supervising that space, so that could be.
The disruptive behavior definition here specifically talks about instruction. Are you looking at altering the definition of a disruption to? I don't know, is that, like, is it clear what disruption means, or that it's not in a classroom space?
I don't think it would be fair to most campus safety or those that are supervising those spaces, so anything that makes the space deviate from its normal purpose. So kids being able to just simply either lunch in the cafeteria or read a book in the library or get tutored, something disruptive. It's a general definition.
So just altering that space for uses that it was not intended for.
Walk in the hallways and
Yes. And I would not take that as the bell rang, we're in the hallway talking to our friends, and now we are being disciplined for standing in the hall talking to friends. That's happens in the hallway. So that is a normal passing period thing. But if I were to come out in the hallway, it's not a passing period and a student is just laying on the floor reading a book, I would address that because they're supposed to be in a supervised area with an adult in class. And so I would say, but I would do it at a level 1 and say, you know, we're not supposed to be out here at this time, where, you know, let's get you to your class or where you're supposed to be.
That's why the levels become important, so that we know that we want to document it in case it's the pattern of behavior. But starting at a level 1, so hopefully kids will learn from that one interaction that they're not supposed to do that.
So,
Wilson and then Susan.
yeah, could you explain a little bit more, what do you mean by like, does not apply to verbal interactions, because like, I would assume what you explain that situation with a kid lying on the floor, I feel like that's verbal interaction of like, hey, I need you to go to your classroom, I need you to like leave the hall and be in adult space.
So I am verbally speaking to them about it, but I'm addressing the behavior of being laid in the floor. If it turns into a confrontation, like then we have a shouting match, then that's an additional code. If there is a interaction that turns to verbal, that actually goes under a different code for that conversation. But I'm just addressing the fact that the behavior of laying in the hall is not what we're supposed to be doing at that time in that space.
So it's student behavior.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So then this would then apply for like kids walking in halls, kids like that kind of thing too.
Like walking in the halls would be being truant or an unauthorized area. Also in this category, I believe.
Yeah, but again, so the nature of them just walking in the hall is not disrupting, yeah, but say they're out there, we're class time and we are just screaming in the hall, like we will not stop. And then like, we know that's not supposed to be happening in the hallways during a non-passing period as we are. That has to be addressed. Susan, I'm sorry, Susan.
That's okay. So I think we've probably talked about this before, but can you remind me, as we're talking about these changes, I'm thinking just the whole behavior plan, education plan, it's a lot for students. I'm thinking, how the kids get trained on this or have a time of going through it like we're going through it? Because I'm thinking, if I'm a teenager, like, I don't want to do anything wrong, but maybe I don't, what's what seems normal to me is not, you know, the way things are in this place. So,
So at the start of the school year, every grade level has an assembly where we actually talk about the behavior education plan in that assembly. We do not go page by page.
Yeah.
It is in their student handbook, which everyone gets at the start of school during scheduled pickup. And there's a part at the beginning where they agree to read through this handbook so that they are aware of everything that is in it. So I would think of it as the DMV book. You all know the Department of Motor Vehicles, and you know how you took that test to say that you were safe on the road? You know how when you go outside, when there's too much traffic, you're like, I can just get around this person and I can just turn here, even though that said stop. It's kind of like that. We aren't stopping every single person for everything. So I'm not saying that any peep in the hallway makes us stop a student. So it's not that restrictive. But students have to be aware of and understand that when bells ring, we are transitioning between classes. Sonia knows I'm out there every day, not every day, but in the beginning of the day, and I'm reminding them, we got 5 minutes, come on. And then by minute 2, I'm like, okay, guys, it's 2 minutes, we gotta get there. But it's not a conversation about the BEP or them breaking a rule per se. And I will tell you that for the most part in this building, people don't have confusion as to whether or not they are doing something they are supposed to be doing or not supposed to be doing. And we can definitely get a student's perspective on that. But it is not a tense situation where you're wondering, are you walking on eggshells? But we do expect them to be aware of what this says. And when they're not, that's why we have level ones to bring to their attention, hey, you're doing a thing that needs to be addressed, and this could escalate if we continue on this. And then we can write the behavior.
I think I'm remembering my calculations from last year correctly, because I reported out of the board, 93% of the students at the school last year did not have any type of misconduct at all. I think parents in the school are doing a great job. These skills are it's.
Seeing no other comments, I would, Andrea?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I just had so to understand at least the framing of this activity, we are confirming new codes to help the deans when they're trying to, I guess, identify where this falls under. I guess my thought process is like, I'm looking for us to, like, yes, deans should be able to identify an incident based on what happened, right? So if this code didn't exist, but something like this did happen, they should be able to address it for what it was. But I'm looking for that, like, and then what? You know, if we're anticipating deans to have this new code and they're using it, yes, we have the data, but what are we doing in addition to that for the student side? That's just what's coming to mind for me. And to address the student really quickly, I still see this as a school. So I do anticipate students to be on their best behavior, go to class, go to the cafeteria and go home, not to treat it like a jungle gym. So there are some things that I think we should be expecting of our students to be responsible in the building. But I'm just a little bit more curious. Yes, we're adding all these new codes, that's great in one way. And then what? Because ISR seem to me that's the first time I've heard of this. And from what I'm hearing, just from this first experience, ISR doesn't address, you know, non-disruptive or disruption in non-classroom spaces. So I'm curious on like, what is that next thing?
I want to make sure I remind you, because we have in all of the scenarios, which I hear from most of them, we discussed, especially last year, the possibility of how the team would apply these codes. ASR, something we discussed. Make sure. I think some of the details of it is what maybe had not heard.
Yeah.
But yeah, for levels 1 through 3, what we're finding is that because we are having a conversation with the live rises to level 2 or level 3, having conversations with multiple adults, parent contact is being made, and we're tracking it in the system. This will the reason for us adding some of these codes is so that we can do a better job of tracking the system. be able to report back to this committee or to the board that these behaviors are ceasing and that we are not having repeat behaviors of the same type. So our data does show us that because we are going through this process, that the kids are learning from that process. Does that make sense? So when you say.
And I do want to make sure we're clear on, these are not new behaviors. So these behaviors have been happening and been recorded in different ways.
Right.
And they're looking for ways to record them differently, but they are being addressed already through in-school reflection. And so it's not as though we're expecting new behaviors. It's just cleaner ways of identifying what it is, so that when we report out, it doesn't just fall under categories like serious misconduct other than what we, so that you have like, what is that? Well, you need serious misconduct, and you need the person who actually confronted the situation to be able to tell you what it is. In this specific, so yes, ISR has been already addressing behaviors of this nature, just categorized in other areas.
Okay. Yes, and
Mhm.
I think what I'm trying to get at is that adding codes, I want to make sure that the data is actually being used to help students, not just, because I can learn in ISR or I can change.
Mhm.
And I think what we're seeing, well, I have a younger sister that goes here, and it is a lot of the things that she's saying, like, yeah, I just sat there and I clicked through and I did it, and then that's it. It's like, okay, they're not learning how to be a better student in the building, they're just changing their behavior, so they're not part of that 7%. And that's what I'm curious about, is that, okay, we're adding these new codes, that's great, but what is happening on the back end for our students other than modules or ISR or talking with your dean and social worker that we're implementing behind these new codes? Because what if in adding more codes, now the 7% becomes 8? What are we putting in place to help our students?
I think one of the things we want to make sure that we don't forget, at the top of every response level, as you see that, where it says that you will, it's always coupled with restorative action. So it is never just ISR, go sit at the machine, go back to class. There's always a conversation. What I'm trying to make sure is happening too, is that relationships with deans aren't just getting stronger, and then students go back into the environment treating everybody else out there the way it used to be. Because that is, we think about human behavior and student and child development. Change happens when change happens, right? Like, we have to want change, we have to believe in change, we have to be compelled to change by the individuals working with us. And that does not happen for children always in the moment that we're asking for it to happen. So I don't know that there's a magic wand that can give us on the day of ISR. It takes constant reproach by different individuals who are trusted adults to make sure that students feel as though they want to be different in this environment. And that goes into a lot of different things, like, why did that behavior happen in the first place in that space? And can we unpack that? Because sometimes it has some deeper root causes than just, I acted up and I didn't know what to be doing at that moment. And so that has to keep happening, but we don't have to do that in an ISR moment in order to do that. So the deans do go back and make sure that they're circling back with students. Their PSS social worker and counselors are sometimes brought in. Mr. Diggs is sometimes involved. So there are conversations outside of that that sometimes aren't highlighted in the ISR moments, per se.
I'll give you a good example of why these stories may come out as well. One of the highest numbers reported out this out to the board as well on misconduct is for vaping. When students are caught with the vaping, this device caught vaping. We have a multi-tiered approach to how we're going to deal with that. There is a module in ISR. For second offenses, there's also a community partner that comes into the school called the Way Back In, where they do more intense drug counseling with students. We do all of that. Do some of those students still continue to vape? Yes, and it's because the problem with vaping is a much deeper social emotional concern. Those are the kids, some of them, who might go to ISR and go it off. Because we're going to tell them what vaping does to your body. We're going to tell you what it does to your brain and how it impacts you. But addressing why that particular kid is choosing to vape or to self-medicate is a much deeper issue, which we will do our best to address with social work and other interventions, but like Linda was saying, it's not an instant fix.
Like to, unless there's any other comments, I'd like to move to approve. Proposed change and add a new incident code, include behavior that disrupts non-classroom spaces, including hallway, cafeteria, field house, subsidy, etc. Give me a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Ayes have it.
Any
Oh,
opposed?
any opposed? Ayes have it. I did wanna mention when we're, I guess, having impromptu sort of question to the group about time. We're already at 7:30 and I don't wanna, I know that generally speaking, we have an hour, 15 minutes-ish.
No, we're.
No, we do it
scheduled
two
for 8:30.
hours.
Oh, we are,
Yeah.
oh, good,
Yep.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my mistake, okay, let's, sounds more.
All right, we'll jump into the next one, surprisingly. There was no comment in the book for going an item. Happens occasionally, I don't want to give you the idea of things just flying around the classroom, always in the school. But it has come up enough to the deans to suggest that we include it. Happens in classroom and non-classroom spaces. We would like to differentiate throwing an object, just in general, that could have hurt somebody, but does not.
Make contact.
Does not make contact. We could have had, specifically throwing an object at somebody. Those objects could be food, calculator, a water bottle. And finally, throwing an object that actually hurts. So we would like to address those at different levels. Ranging from level 2 all the way up to level 3.
I really want to start at a level 1, because I feel like for some of it, it could just be a teacher saying like, hey, don't throw your calculator in class.
I think most teachers would take it at a level 1, I just had to throw like a hand marking pad across the room at another student, and it was just a, like, stop. Like, act like you've been in a classroom before, so I think most teachers would see it that way. I think if it becomes excessive, then that's when we take it to like, okay, like I'm actually going to like write a referral now, and we're gonna like have to take this next level outside of the classroom. So just as like a teacher perspective, I think most teachers would like handle it as such.
One way to accommodate that is to make the first level be level 1 to 2. So I'm not opposed to modifying them.
The former dean just has a quick question. But if I throw a chair at Linda Parker and it makes no contact, there's my concern in terms of how you, like I could say I didn't intend to harm her. I think there has to be a distinction there because I personally experienced some of the situation.
I think for me, and we can discuss this, if you throw a chair, it was, you were intending to do something of harm. Like, I don't know how to convince me that you, now, if your aim is bad, your aim is just bad, but like a
I've
chair.
never thrown a chair on Linda Parker.
Yeah. A chair versus like this pad of paper, there is a different, you have a different intent when you pick the chair up than you do when you pick this up. So I would still say the chair would go to intent to harm because you picked the chair versus a pencil.
But further to that comment, I do think that, and maybe it's just the lawyer in me, but I do think that these three are written in incongruent matter because you're looking at intent in one has no contact, like that first line could have contact, and it's almost as if they don't line up. That's my concern.
Yeah, I agree, it'd be nice to see this be more nuanced and sequential, I think, just, I mean, like, I'd like to know more about, not throwing object with intent to harm, no injury, for instance, throwing object with intent to harm with injury. I mean, I think throwing object with intent to, I mean, I think also the proposed levels should be a little, I think we should have a discussion about that as well, because I think that you could throw an object with intent to harm that could easily be a 4, if, you know, if it's, I could just see a context where it could merit that.
You're unfortunately gonna find that a lot of the other misconducts as well, as people would say, hey, based on what actually happened here, we think it should be handled at a higher level. And the book, the way it's written, does tend to lead us to start on a first offense at the work. And that is in deference to the hope that a student is going to learn from that conversation, as opposed to us jumping to school suspension. This comes up a lot with deans, I just want to point out, and deans are frustrated by it as well. So by no means is the book perfect in telling us how to deal with every situation, but it is a very good guideline.
Let's take each sentence for a second, just we go through. Throwing object at others, no contact. What additional information? Because to me, except for the chair, like, I'm thinking, you did do as much of a phone, if a phone doesn't make contact. What more information for that line are we saying to make it a little bit more, stop signing?
I just wanted to ask, is it necessary to make it so specific? Like, I don't
That's
see
why.
why we couldn't have all of these 3 things fall under the, throwing items thing and just have it be from levels 1 to 4, and then that can be up to the dean's discretion, or is that like too?
It doesn't give us enough discretion. So-
Wait,
Go ahead.
so somebody in here is gonna say something, I know to that, that's exactly why I had to bring it out. I think, okay, go ahead, I'm gonna let Tom speak, because I just,
No, no,
I
no,
knew I
no.
couldn't bring it, it's just.
I'm gonna hush.
This, or, a very good point, because my thing is when we make things very general, the subjectivity comes back in possibly. And so when you say leave it up to the dean, we always are wanting to trust every human being, but how people feel about different things come into it when it's not a little bit more specific to like, how bad was it, right? Because somebody may say, but you picked up a chair. And I would say, yeah, but they picked up a chair and it didn't hit, and now you left it to because this person wants to do a 4 and I'm at a 2, like, don't pick up chairs, what are you doing, I wanna get as far away from subjectivity as we can, but not so specific where we think we can needle out every single thing, which is why I was taking it by sentence, because I don't think you can make this specific enough to imagine the stuff that comes up in life. Like, I've seen things and I've watched it and people are horrified and I'm like, yeah, kids. Because stuff happens and it looks worse on camera without sound than it, like, I remember banging my head and hitting a chair with my sister and I were playing it and it just blood's gushing everywhere. I didn't see it, but I'm sure it was horrifying because we had to go get stitches. But things happen, so I don't want to get to a point where I'm like.
Sonia, that's exactly where we started. And then we
Yep.
realized the way that the book requires us to operate is that the first incidents have to start at the lowest level that is listed for that incident.
Yep.
So we started there, but realized if the kid threw a chair, we'd be required to start
Start
at
at
level
one.
1.
The kid threw something. So this is like a reasonable community. Kids should be disciplined at home, blah, 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 another 8 things. Throwing stuff is wrong. Now, if he throws his phone underhand to someone to use, okay, maybe you can say that's fine, but if everybody's throwing stuff at each other overhanded and they're throwing Post-it pads because they don't have a baseball in their hand to throw, that's some sort of punishment. I mean, at some point in time, somebody's doing something wrong. We can't can't smooth out the curve for no punishment at all. At some point in time, because the first time when it's Post-its, next time it could be a baseball. So then we have the second incident, and then we got somebody hurt. So I think throwing is bad.
I have a question. I looking at both of these, I know we already approved item 3, but I'm wondering, does this throwing ever qualify as behavior that disrupts instruction? So if you're lining up a piece of paper and you're throwing this piece of paper across your room as someone else, something similar somebody else suggested, I mean, could that qualify as a level 1? I guess I'm trying to understand the severity of throwing something.
I think to Wilson's point, he's saying in the classroom, when it's like a balled up piece of paper or it's something lightweight, teachers are pretty much handling that in the room by discussing it with the student and asking that behavior to halt. The thing with the book though, is it has to speak to both spaces unless we start to do everything as in classroom and then out of classroom spaces, and that's just a lot. So this has to also keep into account when you're in the cafeteria and those Stanley cups that everybody loves, those hydro flasks that are stainless steel get thrown because we just playing, that does more damage by accident than if you throw your phone or a water bottle like this. And we didn't have those 12, 15 years ago, right? So that's the thing we're dealing with, is like we're playing, but the play turns not play anymore when someone gets hurt. And that's not necessarily classroom, because most of the time the teachers are stopping that when it's low level. So imagine both places, in and out the classroom for it. Yes, Susan.
This word intent kind of caught my eye or ear, just because. Just again, I'm not an attorney, but to me, it's a legal, it's used in, in different lawsuits. Well, it's hard to prove intent, is what it's coming into my mind.
I mean, you were going line by line, sorry to interrupt you. So let's fix it, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm doing it. That's why I said we can fix it. That's why I was asking for line up, because we can edit this now and make it what fits better for both. So I do want to get to the intent, but for line 1.
Could we remove no contact?
And just say just throwing, even if you don't
Because
have.
we already have real life, real time expert experience saying, if someone throws a pencil from one student to another because the kid didn't bring one, it's probably my kid didn't bring one, then we're in a situation where no one got hurt, it was, oh, toss me a pencil, thank you, no issue, move on. But I feel like one leads into the other, and then we start talking about throwing up. So if someone hucks my water bottle at me as hard as they can, but they don't hit me, they shouldn't get in like big ass trouble, because I feel like they should. Does that make sense? Like,
So
by putting in the no contact, we're then we look to intent, like, if you're throwing something that's possibly dangerous, not like a little pad of paper or a pencil, then we're in a situation, I feel.
That's the key. I think you're right, and I think that the key is whether it's dangerous or not. So how do we capture that in the sentence?
Yes. And I also am trying to not make sure that we don't create something where everyone's like, see, threw something, they threw something, they threw something, they threw something. We cannot manage that in this building, just throwing things at any time, all the time. Like that would be crazy. So I need to make sure that we don't create something that makes people report the throwing of anything, anywhere, at any time. Because
Like,
that's
one
what
thing
could
that the
happen.
law says, and I apologize to bring this up, you brought up battery before. And people always say, I was assaulted, and I'm always like, no, you weren't assaulted, it was battery.
Yes.
And that's the difference, assault is the intent to harm, and then battery is the actual touching.
Right.
So if you look at it like that,
Mhm.
the first prong really goes to it's assault, right? And someone throws some,
Yes, and I'm trying really hard not to.
and I don't want you to use those terms.
Yeah, or
Like,
to take of it in that way, because I don't have a jail to put them in. So
I
I need to
understand.
keep, like,
Stand.
it's here, it's more of an annoyance, like we will start throwing it and it just bothers people. And then we get these reports and then you're chasing kids for, please stop throwing that paper, please stop that. And I needed to at least be some type of, what was the purpose behind this throwing?
And just to be clear, like this is meant to address the lowest levels.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, we have other codes
Yes.
for things that we consider battery. So we have physical force towards a student that could easily be more serious, hitting a student even with a chair. So we didn't intend this to capture everything that could be thrown. Unfortunately, with the worst incidents, there are multiple codes that could apply, and it means have to basically.
That's fair.
Wilson?
It just seems like, then why do we even have them throwing objects at others at all? Because I feel like then it seems like what we're getting at is we really want kids, like, it just that, like, it doesn't make sense to, like, it's like you're saying, Linda, it's like throwing is everything, right? Throwing objects with no like, well, that could be anything, like, again, I literally had a kid throw their like heating pad across the room at another student, right? And there was no contact, but I was immediately going like, okay, let's not do it. So it seems like the big jump then is where we need to start with intent to harm. Seems like that's where we need to start for me at least.
And the reason why,
Yeah.
it was written that way is for the non-classroom spaces.
Yeah, I was about to say,
The cafeteria.
people thinks it's funny to keep lobbing something and not, you know, and just
Another table.
like they need a way of capturing that child who is like, you think this is funny, but then you keep doing it, but you're not trying to hurt anybody.
So
Just-
all the water bottle flipping that went on this year, where would that fall into?
Flipping water bottle.
You're talking about
Throwing the bottle.
It's the throwing, the flipping doesn't, is just the contact with the table or thing, it's the.
Okay.
Tossing that would be,
So the water flippers are good.
well, again, an annoyance, but that's the thing, it's like, we just need them to stop that behavior, and then if there's no contact and they continue to do it after all this. We can also do failure to redirection,
Yes.
I mean, if we have to, right, do that code, yes.
But where does throwing something have no intent to harm anybody, but you throw something and it's a reckless act that ends up causing an injury? Or could have caused an injury.
It's-
How do we?
Number 3, if you cause injury, whether you meant it or not, is 3, is the
That's
third
why
one.
it doesn't say throwing objects at others, but that was taken out. Causing injury.
Yeah, if you, yeah.
What about the first one?
Oh,
though?
sorry, I think so.
What about the first one though, just, I mean, I just don't see it covered throwing something
Mhm.
and just throwing it, and it could potentially injure somebody, and it doesn't, that still should be a part of this.
So that was the intent of the second line. Throwing any object,
With intent to harm though.
but we're talking about taking off the intent part, I think we're gonna open that up.
Okay.
So, yeah, I can't.
Well, I was gonna say something earlier, I think some people addressed some of what I was gonna say, but I think you're right about taking off the no contact part of the first one, because that just like over specifies it, but I do think we do need that throwing object at others, cause that could be like you were saying, you know, chucking a heavy metal water bottle back the room, across the room, but I think, you know, that would fall under the level 1 thing where the teacher just says, hey, don't do that, and then if they keep doing it over and over again, that's when it would lead to like a more, you know, like a bigger thing, but I honestly think that if we remove the no contact, I feel like that then covers everything, you know?
So keeping it throwing object at others, starting at a 1, and then we could be 1 to 2, if it persists.
I really like the thing you saying of like without following redirection or things like that, because then I think it covers it where it's like, we have told you to stop this, and now you are like escalating.
So make it a 1 and
Yeah.
then just go to failure to respond to redirection.
Yeah.
For 2, so, okay. So the first sentence now is throwing object at others, and it'll be a 1. Okay, no 2, just a 1.
So if it hits somebody, which line is it gonna fall under? Even accidentally, is it gonna be throwing object with injury then? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
If it makes contact, they were playing around with makes contact.
Throwing object that leads to harm instead of intent to harm,
Could potentially.
leads to harm.
I like the word results in the word.
Results.
Well, it's injury, but then you made that clear before.
Yeah,
But there's the difference between you're playing around and it hurts somebody, and you're really going after somebody to hurt them too, in terms of level. So, I don't know.
and unfortunately, these things are big, like. Because people aren't usually right there in the moment, it's very hard to figure out what. Like either you're injured and there's blood showing, and we just know that's an injury. Or you said, I didn't mean to hurt them, and then it's like. Yeah, so. It's.
So there's some level of discretion and judgment in deciding these.
Mhm.
And remember, this is only intended to be used for these lower level incidents that do not turn into somebody going to the hospital. usually it's gonna be a fight. In those cases.
I think intent to harm is almost like you didn't cause injury, but you were going to do something, like you were trying to do something. It just didn't happen. Right, yeah.
How do you know though? You could say, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it, sorry.
Yeah, the DEP is very experienced with those kids. But I agree with the word intent being a little,
Yeah, we do. They were just
with-
throwing object to harm.
Potential to harm?
Oh, potential.
Even if I threw it behind me, I didn't mean to harm anyone, but potential was there because.
That works. Does everybody like that? Throwing object with potential to harm?
I like it,
And starts at a 3?
Maybe two.
I'd say
2?
Yeah.
I would say a range. Sorry, I'm just like, I'm trying to chew on this and I'm not really vibing with it. I think for the first one, I would add, or I would want it to say throwing object at others, no harmful contact, 1 to 2. The second line, throwing object with intent to harm or with harmful contact, 2 to 3. And then for the third one, saying throwing an object with intent to harm or produce injury, whatever, 4 to 3 to 4 or 4 to 5. I just feel like there should be a range. And I only feel that way because this is under disruptive and uncooperative behavior. So if I'm throwing a water bottle, and I'm just doing it by myself, I'm not disrupting anyone, especially if I'm just in the cafeteria. But yes, now if we add another layer to it and I throw it and it hits somebody behind me, okay, I threw the object, yes, but there's no harmful contact. So the only thing that I think should happen is someone say, hey, don't throw the water bottle. But I feel like we can continue to escalate where the water bottle goes or who it hits, if we intended to hit them. And for that, it should just be a range and adding the word harmful contact or no contact to each line.
The allowance for the word potential, I just think covers a range of situations, because obviously the chair, yes, it probably would be, unless it was thrown at someone, was thrown on the floor, it likely didn't harm anyone, but had the potential to harm. And there was no injury and there was no contact, so it doesn't really fall, and obviously it's disruptive classroom behavior and a number of other issues too, but if someone does throw a chair or a desk or something large, even a backpack, like, it's just that anything, looking into intent, like, didn't sit well with this potential part. And I understand why, you're struggling with that a little bit, but to me, it just like opens it's like, if you throw a water bottle, you didn't mean it, but it really could hurt someone, like, y'all can't be throwing water bottles type of thing.
I think it the startling effect too, so like if you're just doing your thing and a water bottle comes, like, that's why and then harm today means so much more than what harm yesterday used to look like. Mental wellness always comes into effect, and like I'm eating lunch and things flying around me really sets some kids off. Like, they want different spaces in this building, so they don't have to sit in that space with 600 people and things possibly as projectiles landing even near them, even if it's not on them. It affects people differently, and so I think we have the throwing the object at one thing, just like stop doing that, and we said that is a 1. So throwing the object is somebody addressing you at a 1. Throwing an object that had a potential to harm someone, there's more that has to happen than me just telling you to stop, because I need you to understand what else could have happened there without me just saying stop and you're like, okay, next time. Like, I need you to understand that you don't throw those Stanley, cups at people or in the air for random reasons. And then injuring somebody is injury. It's just you hurt someone, like you actually hurt someone. And so that just leads to to a different consequence. I do agree with the range. So if we have a 1 for the first and we have a 2 to 3 for the second, where would we want injury to begin? Is injury going to begin at a 3? That's where it says now.
What's injury? What kind of injury?
You don't think we can get involved in
Ouch,
injuries?
and
I
you
mean,
get, it hits you in the face, and so you have. You get red in the face, is that
No.
injury?
No, generally it'll be a bruise, a contusion, or drawing blood, broken bones, obviously. That language aligns with what we have in the excessive physical aggression section, which is why it was used again here. So we already do have the experience in determining if there was an actual injury. Some of the injury would be determined by the victim. Whether they were, and some people say, no, I wasn't harmed at all. I don't have a suggestion, just in the interest of time, because unless I'm incorrect, not having a unanimous approval of those, that we see if we can put a code in through.
Yeah, and I just wanted to remind everyone that the levels still have, level 3 has 1 to 3 days, so it's not just like, there's still a variety of measures that can occur within
That is actually the max that we could use. Even if it's listed at level 3, depending on the circumstances, the dean might determine that something lesser. But it does not preclude them from choosing a little lower.
After they get investigated.
Ms. Parker, I was gonna say for the first ones, I believe she was asking for a rank on that one too, 1 to 2, not just.
Oh, so that it goes up to 2? Okay.
And I can see why she would say like if it's a throwing something to a food fight, you would want that to be more than 1.
If it's their first time, it wouldn't start at the 2 though. If 1 is an option, it will always start at the 1. So even if they start the food fight, it would start at a 1, and if they start another food fight another day, then that would go to a 2. I'm fine with that. Are we fine with that? 1 to 2? Okay, so 1 to 2 for the first, 2 to 3 for the second, throwing object with potential to harm. As a 2 to 3, and then throwing object with injury. Right now it's 3 to 4. What is it?
How would you guys feel about making the last one 2 to 4? Cause I still like, maybe somebody draws blood, but it's just a little scratch and they don't really care about it, maybe. I don't know if that necessarily would need to be a 3, so, but I think it would be fine to make it 2 to 4, and if it was like a serious thing, the deans could make it better.
Wouldn't that be when the victim comes into play, the victim would say like, not like, it's fine, like, yeah, I got a little scratch, but like, it's cool.
Yeah, and the difference between a 2 and a 3, because both deal with ISR, a 2 means you can only get up to 1 day. But a 3, you could start at a 1 day. So if it was a scratch and the person doesn't think it's bad, the dean could just give 1 day of ISR with a 3. So they don't have to go to the maximum of 3 days just because there was what looked like an injury because of blood. But it gives them more flexibility if it is a little bit more.
Yeah, the rationale for starting at a higher level is to make sure that we can have progressive discipline and really emphasize it not happening. When you start at a lower level, it gives more opportunity for things to happen again. With lesser consequences.
So just so I'm clear, is it just the second that we changed the verbiage and?
We took off no contact from the
We
first.
did, okay, we did take the contact, and then the 10, throwing object potential harm, so that's it as far as changing.
I thought it was no contact, potential to harm, I thought we put the no contact back on, what did other people think?
As you say, it could be contact, it's the throw, it's a whole.
And that's 1 to 2.
And that's 1 to 2.
So if it was contact on the first one, the potential to harm on the second one, it pops off their arm, but it wasn't really potential to harm. That's the difference if you make contact with the first.
I think we're thinking the first one is like
Just
posted on something's wrong with somebody.
And even if you hit them.
And is the second one a 3 to 4?
Second one is 2 to 3.
2 to 3, and the first one is 1 to 2.
Correct. And the third one is 3 to 4.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, did we say number 1 was just throwing something?
So
not necessarily at a person, but it's like, oh, I'm throwing something up in the air and it goes.
Keep it
haywire.
at others.
at others.
So at others is in there, yeah, okay.
So we can call for the question.
Right, I'd like to move to approve the proposed change, add new incident code with 3 distinctions. Throwing object at others, close levels 1 to 2. Throwing object with potential to harm, close levels 2 to 3. Throwing object resulting in injury, levels 3 to 4. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, well.
In the way you just read that, you said resulting in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that's, so, I mean, I can write that, that's what we just voted on, instead of with injury.
Oh, okay. Should I go back and?
Does that?
They you just need to make sure that-
Resulting in, okay, I'll keep it that, that's what you all voted on, resulting in injury. Okay, thank you.
Okay, jumping into number 5, this one is in the interest of building safety. We realized there was not a code here, and this is definitely an emphasis this year with our new director of campus safety and new standard response protocol. Kids propping doors open. So the lowest level here proposed is, for an example, a kid who props the door open because they want to come back through that door when they return to lunch, from lunch, because it's closer to the next class. No real intent to harm, but something that is not okay for the safety of the rest of this building. And then we have the more serious incident of purposefully holding the door open or propping the door open to allow another person in and thereby bypass the security functions of the building. And that is very, very serious and not specifically outlined anywhere.
The kids open doors because it's hot. No. No.
Now let's see.
Door open until
Let me clarify.
it's hot.
We're talking about outside exterior doors, not like a classroom door or, a door that leads to the outside.
So the first one, propping open door for any reason, I mean, really could potentially result in a very serious outcome. And so I would certainly propose there being more of a breadth of levels for that one. Just because I would say it would merit a 2 to 3 based on.
And can we actually take that into consideration? Yes, sorry, come back to your point, Jonathan. Propping open a building door. For any reason. Yes. Propping open a building door.
Door.
But to Jonathan's point, just to give a quick example of how we handle these, these are the ones where we actually had to have some really good restorative outcomes. The student who was off the door, spending time in school, but also spending part of that day not in the in-school room, walking with a member of campus safety and shadowing them so that they can see and better understand the job of keeping the building safe. We actually had students who really, come out of that stating that they learned a lot about why it's important to think before they do something silly like that. It's convenient for them, but really, really serious for us. So, not disagreeing with you. We've been able to address the majority of the ones we found just with one day of ISO.
I love that restorative outcome, that's incredible. But it's a level 2, it's not necessarily in school. Instruction, right?
That is the max, yes.
Yep,
Max,
one day.
1 day.
The max.
May
May
result.
result. So my concern further to what Jonathan was saying is propping open the door for any reason is a little bit concerning. And I appreciate that, we don't necessarily want to stick a kid in school with reflection and for maybe the first time they did it, but it's my gut telling me that should start a little higher, but I guess keeping it 2 to 3, but it was the first time it would have to start at
But keep in mind the little nuances, even if you were to start this at level 4, the dean could roll it all the way back to Saturday detention or lunch. So I know this gets lost sometimes in the way we apply this book. It is, the dot only implies the max. So putting the dot there just tells us what possibilities we are open to, but it does not require us to start it. So even moving it to start at a level 3 does not preclude them from using a lower intervention. So that's it.
Or restored intervention.
Could you explain the difference in these two? Like, why else would a child need to prop the door other than to bypass?
To let some students in that don't belong here, could have nefarious purposes in the building.
You explain the first one or the second one?
Second,
No, but the first one.
Imagine 7 a.m. practice. And teachers walking in the door to come to work and the door is propped open because somebody from a team propped it open to help them get back and forth to the, without needing to get coached. I mean, we've had doors open at 5 a.m. and like we check it on the camera and we see like a kid, and it doesn't mean the kid did it on their own. Sometimes an adult told the kid to go prop the door open, and that's even stickier. But then there is the second one, which is they are intentionally getting a text from someone saying, come open the door, and they go open it. That's the second.
But what about making the first one a 2 to 3? You don't think that's?
I think it's fine, because but I'm just trying to be clear that it doesn't accomplish maybe what the intent of the suggestion was, because if you started at, the suggestion on this paper is to start at, to have it only be at a level 2, which means the max you're gonna get is 1-day ISR.
1 to 3. No, excuse me, 1.
Moving into a level 2 to 3 still means the first incidence is still gonna be at level 2. They would have to do it
Repeat it,
again,
then what do you do if they repeat it?
and our history shows that they. So it potentially could happen, and yes. So yes, moving it to level 2 to 3 means we have a progression.
We just have the,
But
yeah.
starting it at level 3 does not accomplish any goal of what they could potentially get for that. But I am definitely okay with it.
Split the difference, 2 to 3. So I have the first line saying propping open exterior door for any reason. Starting at a 2 goes to 3. And then I have no change to the sentence after, and it starts at a 3 and goes to 4. To the second one as well. Yeah.
Exterior to both of them. Yeah.
And exterior.
No other comments, I move to approve the proposed change of adding new incident codes, propping open exterior door for any reason, post level 2 to 3, holding open or propping open, holding open or propping an exterior door to allow another person to enter and bypass security protocols, levels 3 to 4. I need a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Let's have it, move on.
Okay. Number 6 is an easy one. Happens more frequently in the hallways. Students who refuse to identify themselves by showing their ID or stating their name. Notice that we only pose this as a level 1, which means it actually does not track and will never get to an ISR or a suspension. This is more for tracking purposes for students who are repeatedly engaging in this behavior. And the note is that the deans will report this in the guidance data. That's something specific in Skyward. That is not a part of the student's disciplinary record, but it would allow the deans to keep track of those instances to interview. This one is really small, that it's not. Who's are going to
I'm going to motion to approve the proposed change of adding new incident code. Deans will report in guidance tab after report in the future, was level 1.
I second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? If you guys have it.
Item number 7 is one that you would not think occurs when it has occurred twice this school year. So we are looking at this one, but we are not unanimous in suggesting this to this committee, I'm just being honest. We have students who have been assigned to ISR who want to, in misconduct, who either refuse to go, avoid it, stay home. And in some cases, the parent supports that behavior. As in, they will not send their child to school, use an ISR. And there is a debate about what to do with that. So the suggestion here is to not add a new code. We actually already have a code in the disruptive and unprocessed behavior section that says failure to serve detention. We're looking to modify that to say failure to serve detention or ISR. But we would want to open up the possibility, or some would want to open up the possibility, is if we cannot do an ISR because you refuse to serve it, there has to be some thing that would be level 4, would be a potential out of school.
Question? I guess okay, so my question is, if I'm a student and my mom said you're not going to school because you're not going to class, then we have you going to ISR, and I'm being double punished, like, how are we, you shrug, but how do we,
Well, they
like,
haven't been punished at all, because they're just staying at home.
well, if I've done something, sorry to get me assigned ISR, whatever that thing was, and then it's not within my option to do it, why isn't there like another alternative to say, okay, well, I can't do ISR, but I can do Saturday detention? It's not like negotiating, and that's essentially what I'm asking. But it's like, how do we? If we're sending our child to school, but they're not going to class, they're going to ISR, where is that for us to say, we don't want them to go, we'd rather them continue in the classroom?
So we have an appeal process for OSS. We do not have one for ISR because to state code, ISR is like being in school for the day. So when we do our disciplinary recording as to students who were removed from the learning environment, it does not count ISR because they are in the school for the day. When they stay home, that is the equivalent of an out of school suspension for us. Even if it's by the parent leaving, but we're not changing our code to say we out of school suspended you when your parent kept you home. You owe time in school in an ISR, and that is what the book is like, and the dean in terms of the investigation have decided it has to happen. And I think we get into a sticky place when it becomes well, I'd like to negotiate what I'm gonna do, because that's not how you all have voted on this. I don't get to negotiate right now what we're doing. I take back what you vote on, and then that's what becomes this book. Then now we're saying I can allow students to negotiate beyond what you have said are the terms. So we've spent 2 hours doing this, but now I can just, and then it's subjective to Parker and deans as to how I wanna, so who is Parker letting go and negotiate, and then who is Parker not? And that will get us into a space where I will hear, are we being equitable with how we're doing it? Because it sounds okay as long as you think all the kids are getting this negotiation right. Again, very sticky for me. I would like it to be what it is. And so and that's what he meant when he said we didn't all agree, because I'm like, if you have an ISR, you have to serve your ISR. Because that is what was determined in the process.
How do you ever work this out? The parent is the one that's saying, no. My child's staying. Where does this ever go?
Well, that's why we're here.
Well,
Trying to
So to
work this out.
clarify,
Mhm.
for this one, you want the student stays home for whatever reason, knowing that they have an ISR. And then whether they unilaterally decide or their parents or guardian decides, then you want to retroactively, or what have you, change the code to 4, so that it becomes an out of school suspension?
So just clarifying, you were asking the question, so usually what happens if they stay home, then put ISR, we're gonna return to school, and then we have them serve the ISR, that would be the perfect solution. But this is built for people who are purposely avoiding it, and sometimes it's not the parent, it is the kid who just says, I am not going into that room, you can't make me. You can't, because of these. But in addition, we would not retroactively change the code. This would be an additional code to record the fact that this was the progression. So they had an original incident throwing an object in the chair. They were supposed to go to ISR. Now they have an additional code refusing to go to ISR. I will say the way we've been handling this is one of the goals here. So we're doing this, but it's been any other serious misconduct not otherwise listed. And so the point of putting it in here is to, again, avoid using that generic code and to put exactly what is happening here so that we can better track a pattern.
Well, just to be clear, I guess I'm confused why we're still using the nomenclature of detention at all.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's a reference to something that we're just trying to make sure we're not adding another line to the book, because there's already in a line here that says failure to serve detention.
Yep.
Oh, no, I guess I'm, wouldn't that be in the classified, I mean, groups, speaking, wouldn't we include that as one of the more pejorative terms that we want to do? I mean,
Why would we want to do away with detention?
well, I guess I'm unclear, is that off, is that weekends then?
So we have lunch detention, we also have Saturday. detention.
Okay, so.
Lunch detentions aren't, like, it's a progressive, Saturday is not something you get automatically, it's something if you aren't doing your detentions, correct?
I bet that could be, yes.
It could be.
It could be, yeah.
I guess I'm just wondering about the, Tim, I don't know, were you gonna say something? Oh, I guess, doing away with some of the language that informed the other. I mean, isn't it all about more reflective, creating the space to be more reflective, in discipline, or is detention really, does it still just exist as this cold, icy sort of isolated?
Yeah, but stays different.
I just want
It's not ISO.
Okay, I just
There's no module.
I just want to be clear on that, we're still, okay.
So, and I have something to.
So, and to the point I was making, the reason why David is saying this has to be a 4 is if we don't press on the ISR and we count the day they stayed home, to us, that's an out of school suspension. Like, because you stayed home and out of school is not in school. So if we leave it ISR, it's,
False attendance.
thank you, I didn't want to say fraudulent. It's falsifying attendance, because you did not serve an ISR.
Talking to me, that wasn't the thing I wanted to just.
No, I was just saying that out loud of why this is a 4.
Yeah.
Why it has, yeah,
So can I just ask a question?
sure.
So, and I'm being picky here about language.
Mhm.
I see the word serve, and that feels like prison.
Okay.
And I've said that before, not this year, but before. It just feels like you use the word policing. It seems like you're serving time.
How about we say failure to attend
Great.
detention? We can just change that in the book, even though that wasn't its own thing, you can vote on that. The thing in the book says failure to serve detention. I'm suggesting to change it to failure to attend detention. For that line,
So if they don't serve the
attend.
if they don't attend ISR, then and they get the out of school suspension, do they have to come back and serve the ISR?
He's saying that's how we would recode it and say, we would count that day that they were kept out of school by, for whatever reason, as an OSS.
I think my concern is
And it's a separate code, like we would give it a,
it feels like it's a double punishment for something on top of the fact that removal from school is for the most severe behaviors. And so,
but we're not saying take them out again, we're counting the day they stayed out, so it already happened because they just didn't come.
right, but there's no work being done when they're at home or they're not serving the ISR. The whole thing with ISR is get to work time.
So how do we make them come? Because we said come, and they said no.
But didn't we just say that when they stay home 2 days, but then day 3, wouldn't they then serve the ISR?
Then, yes. I would say yes, the dean would have the option and say, okay, you're claiming you were sick for 2 days, whatever, you still got to do your ISR.
I think if you earn an ISR, you come back and get the ISR when you return.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but we're saying for a person who just will not do it. So this is not for the case, I was out 2 days and now I will come and do my ISR.
may
That
still
means we wouldn't
refuse.
do this. We're talking about the refuser. You can't make me, I'm not going, I will stay out until you get rid of this. We're saying we would just change the code. You see what I'm saying? This is the refuser. So the ISR refuser. Like the school refuser.
You know, I would make it more specific then. If the proposed change should say what it says over here, the concern, refusal to attend detention or ISR.
Okay, instead of failure.
And
Refuse.
I would like to add to that, just to rule out the parent factor is intentionally refusing. I mean, you could, I originally liked the word failure because that allows the parent to be placed in here somehow, but if you could say you refuse, but if you were just, I know you are intentionally refusing, so that puts it back on the child and not necessarily the parent.
We've had both.
Well, I like the word, that's just me, I like the word intentionally refusing to do it.
So refusal instead of failure.
She's saying
Saying.
But I think we're trying to stay away from that intent based on
Yeah.
last conversation.
So this accidental refusal?
This isn't saying that if they don't come, they get another, no, an actual. If this is the, he said modify the incident code, so we're modifying the code in our system.
The reason why I was, sorry. The reason why is because failure kind of adds in if somebody is sick or if they say, okay, if they really mean I'm sick, I couldn't come these 2 days, and I'm just saying that we should go after those that are mean to, as you say, not ever come. And, you know, I mean, how do you find that fine line of those that are just who are saying, listen, it was just all kinds of bad things that happened that stopped me from coming to school. And then those that are, you know, good and well that they have this intent to never.
Well, the first example would be allowed in social services.
And
They just wrap up absences.
Correct. So it is always given the option of doing ISR upon return. So this is not an automatic, what our thought is you're actually absent because you need to be absent. But when you come back, the first day back is your ISR. And at that point, you're saying, I'm back, I'm not going to this ISR. Or I'm coming back and I won't do that ISR when I get there.
But how many days qualify you for, where's the balance? Where's someone who's just missed 2 days or 3 days, or someone who's just doing it for weeks?
At this point, they're getting into a place where they're harming themselves or their parent is harming them, because every day of this class time is bad. And so some of this is to put an end into it, because when we're saying that we will count your absence as an out of school suspension, and then we're done with this incident. And hopefully whatever was stopping you from coming to school then will allow you to come to school. But there are a lot of instances you're correct, and so you have to deal with these. Just a reminder, it's happened 2 times this year, and that's unusual. It did not happen at all last year. So it's not a very frequent thing.
So I'm trying to get a handle on, are we failure? And this would be in both of these sentences, or are we refusal?
See, to me, I would make it refusal because failure could mean all sorts of reasons. You were sick or this happened, this and that. But you're really targeting those who refuse.
I agree.
So you go with refusal?
Attend.
Who?
To attend.
Yes, I have felt refusal to attend detention, refusal to attend detention or ISR. Well, I guess now there was detention ISR, one sentence.
I'd like to move to sorry.
I was gonna ask, is it possible to have 2? To have 1 failure to attend detention or ISR, and then a second, what was the word you were saying? Refusal, thank you. To attend detention or ISR. I feel like these are two, to me, they're 2 different things. Failure would be 3, maybe. refusal would be a 4 or a range. But I feel like there is a difference between recognizing I have this and I can't come and recognizing I have this and I will not come. I think those are two separate things that can happen.
But there is no failure to attend ISR. That's what we're saying. Currently, you didn't come there. ISR is supposed to be on the designated day, but if you're absent, you're sick, fail to attend for whatever reason, you will move it in the system to the next day that you come back.
Yep, because the absence will override whatever is put in there. So every day that you're absent, it's just gonna keep saying absent. For whatever reason you're absent, we're not counting against you. We're just waiting for you to come back. And that next day will be ISR.
And when I come back and I say I'm not going,
Then that's refusal. We're only consequencing refusal,
okay,
not failure. Like failure, you're just absent for whatever reasons, for however long. As long as when you do it. Yeah, but when you come back and you do it, we're good.
but I'm thinking about the student who says, I'm okay, I would rather say I refused, failed to attend. Escalated to the level 4, not to say a student would say this, but I'm just saying. I've been out of school suspension and now I'm done. That's
Yes.
exactly what this is.
Yes,
Okay.
so you
Yes,
come back
that
and
is
you're
concern.
refusing, and then we just go to this.
And that's why we had even internal debate about it, but
Yep.
I'm not
Yeah, well, a lot of
doubtful
people
that
do
that would be a possibility.
So this would be a student that is present, but just won't go into. the-
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, they're in the school building and they will not go to ISR.
Okay, now I like the word.
Mhm.
Cause you're not gonna drag them.
You just can't. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I think I'm confused because if I got assigned an ISR and I come to the building where I refuse to go, like I never stayed home, are you then suspending me out of school for it?
Calling somebody. to
Come get you.
Come get you.
Mhm. You cannot on the day of come to school and, like you gotta do something. So either you're staying home or you're going to ISR. On the first day.
So we're just gonna keep it at, refusal to attend detention or ISR.
Yes, just that one sentence,
Okay,
modify.
I would like to move to approve the proposed change of modifying incident code failure to serve detention to refusal to attend detention or ISR.
No detention.
Yeah, it's detention, because right now it's secret detention.
So you would suspend someone out of school for not going to detention?
Oh.
See, that's what that will read as,
Oh,
if it goes to a 4.
No, so. If you remember that the kids already committed an offense that was at level 2 or 3. And so there's gonna be an additional misconduct, so you can put it in as just a separate line that starts at level 4. Leave the detention,
Yeah.
just trying not to.
This will be modified and this will be new. We'll leave the one that says, but it won't say failure to serve, it will say refusal to attend. What's already in the book, and then we will add this as another line. That says refusal to attend ISR.
So people do refuse to go to detention.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so that's gonna be a 4.
No.
No, what's that gonna be?
Tuesday detention, escalates to Saturday detention, Saturday detention, that's what it's started.
So that detention comes out of this.
Yes, and we're adding new.
Let's do that again. I'd like to move to approve the proposed change, modifying incident code failure to serve detention to refusal to attend ISR at level 4. Can I get a second? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, we still.
Sorry, just to clarify, I thought we were, to Ms. Newman's point, adding a line of,
It is.
because he did modify it again, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sure.
Yep.
Oh.
This is another line, because we are going to have the line that's in here already stay in here, but we're gonna change the word to refusal to attend detention. That already exists, but I'm changing those 2 words. Then what we just voted on is gonna be a new line, not a modified line. And it's gonna say refusal to attend ISR.
So I gotta do that again.
Yes.
Okay. So we're modifying, I'm sorry, it's just so. Just so I'm clear, we're modifying failure to serve detention to refusal to attend detention,
Yes.
and then we're adding a line. Of just refusal to attend ISR.
Yes.
Okay. All right, would like to move to approve the proposed change of modifying the incident code failure to serve detention to refusal to attend detention, and then also adding a separate line of refusal to attend ISR. Can I get a second? Second. All those in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it.
If you guys are aware of times on.
Yeah, and I'm
Keep the last.
Okay.
That's not what-
Okay.
Skip. Circle and stuff.
I'll say one. So number 8 actually is very important. We need to be more specific in our language around theft and property damage. Because we want to differentiate between theft of somebody's calculator versus theft of somebody's car. So it sounds extreme, and yes, no, it has not happened here, but there is a difference in severity there that needs to be addressed with different levels. So we already have failure to respect property, materials property, and stealing from others. We would like to make sure that that includes possession of stolen property, because that is a nuance that has come up. So say, for example, somebody's cell phone was stolen in a classroom and is found to be in possession of a student who says, I didn't steal it, I found it. Possession of that stolen property, you'll know it's not there. It's the language used in the education funds. But more importantly, we're interested in differentiating the value. Value is something that you can determine what the dean suggested was anything less than $100 is usually not as consequential. But $500 is what the state of Illinois designates as a felony. And that's pretty serious, so we wanted to make sure that that was treated at the highest level.
Well, that word felony won't go in the book though.
Right, word felony.
Discussion.
Does this get reported to the police or no?
No. Report to police necessarily.
Parents can.
Parents can though.
For the first prong, value damage less than 100, should that go to 50? Because, you know, the calculators, that's one of they're expensive, and they're around the 100 mark, whether you paid 89 on sale or 125. Like, to me, a calculator stolen, that would suck. And phones are obviously in the felony range as listed here, and for the most part, but the 50 seems inconsequential, but when you start approaching 80, 90, it's starting to get up there.
Problem is, we don't want to leave a gap. So if we lower the first one to 50, then the next one becomes 50 to 500. We could solve that by adding 4 levels. So
You were
less than
saying
50.
change 100 to 50 on the first one? So less than $50?
Usually.
I mean, stealing is one of the problems that happens in this building affects pretty much every person who graduates from this school gets something stolen.
It's covered because it says less.
I mean, I don't, most people I know have multiple things stolen over years, but it is what it is, but, I guess this one, I guess for that reason, maybe it's home with just people who know, and no kids, but, it is a fairly common thing, I think.
I think it does cover what you're.
Anything less than, so it's 0 to 100 is the first one.
So what would you value, like the TI, whatever, is that over 100?
I think they are over 100.
They are, yeah.
But Anglo's point of distinction though, is that when we place the value on the item, it's the value of.
With depreciation.
So $1,000 cell phone, it would be the value of that phone now.
Right.
So my phone right now is worth $200. Don't laugh at me.
Choice.
Can we, oh, that was loud. Can we include that line then? I feel like that may come up of like, at the time of. Getting stolen is, but. If I say I just bought this phone, if I know it costs $1,000, if someone took it tomorrow. It's $1,000 versus saying next year someone took it out, it's depreciated in value.
I think
Is
that
that
language
important?
would probably go in the appendix,
Okay,
if it's not there already. That's what we delineate more detailed procedures about how it's.
the real question I had was about the, return. Or like identifying that it's someone's object, so if I say. I was in class, I lost my AirPods. And Wilson, who's married to the student, so. He took them, and so I reported to my dean or to my counselor or something. At what point is it stealing, you know, if I say, well, these are $100, and I guess I'm trying to ask like. How are we identifying when something is stolen versus when something is lost?
I always tell kids is that there is no such thing as finders keepers. So oftentimes kids walk past a cell phone that's left charging in top left. You can't take that. Some think that they can't. In the same way that a car that is outside warming up in the wintertime, you wouldn't hop in and drive it away. So you have to understand that something that does not belong to you that has value. There is no finders keepers. There is finders and say, hey, who's this? Let me help you out. And that's a lesson that we have to impart. So unfortunately, that's why we added the possession language. Not using it punitively, respecting somebody who's like, hey, you found it and intended to return it, you didn't get to it yet. Hey, and then it probably would go through the snare system, but finding something and holding on to it with no intention of returning it. It's a problem.
I think I would just want that language of like, and identified as not. I know that that's possession of stolen property, but like, and identified as someone's thing. Not every kid, but forever with an iPhone and it has the same case, I can say they stole it. But once it's identified as that's my phone, then like it's been identified as this is not that person's object versus it being a mistake. Like, oh, we have the same phone case and I just picked it up.
I think that would come, to some extent, we have to trust the deans to handle that in their investigation.
Okay.
That they're not, once the situation's worked out between two kids, and either it's impossible to prove intent or to say certainty that may or may not result in consequences.
With phones too, with the frequency at which they look at them, like they find out very quickly it's not their home, like when they go in to try. And most of the time around here, kids are trying to get it back to whomever. Like they're like, oh my goodness, I got somebody's phone. Like it's an immediate like, you know, give this to somebody. It's not usually, the other ones aren't trying to get it back to. Okay, that happens. So are we saying that, because I'm not exactly sure with the calculators right now, depending on depreciation, could be falling in the second or the first. So you're saying that you would want it to be falling into the second one?
Well, I mean, the end result of getting this calculator stolen is what? There's gonna be buying a calculator, second one in excess of 100. I mean, that's kind of, you know, I think we have to think of the purpose of the EEP here is it's for reflection and understanding and stealing is a problem, so we have to sort of address it in a way that makes sense. So I just worry about that 100 mark because, you know, my phone is probably 4 years old but if I lose it or it breaks, it's gonna be, you know, gonna the same amount of money, which is why I'm holding onto it until it explodes. But I just think that, you know, we can say property crime doesn't matter, but in this case, it's harmful to kids when their stuff is stolen. It makes them feel not safe at school.
And I think it's harmful to kids when the stuff is stolen without regard to the value, right? I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with equating a dollar amount of value.
Thank you. Like, this is what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, because I can see, you know, like a child or a student who has a $30 thing that they love, that is the most important thing in the world to them, and that's stolen out of malice by another student. And we're gonna say that's not as important as somebody else, you know, getting a really expensive thing.
But what about a student claimed the theft of 2 desktop computers from school's computer lab. Walked out of the building with them.
That's a crime.
It is, but it's not differentiated, and in this book currently, it would fall at a level 2 one day by itself.
But isn't, well, legally that's a crime.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be handled by? Yeah.
Those are 2 separate things. So. And as a school, we have to address that. And there is a pathway to restorative justice there as well, but. The school community is harmed by a serious theft of property from the school.
On an individual level, though, you're saying a $30 jacket is really expensive to some people. So there is.
There is restitution, but usually what's worked out in these arrangements when you find somebody that has stolen something is one part of the restorative process. Could be restitution that you are going to pay back the value of that item if it's not returned. But those are all things that are worked out in the process.
Is the purpose of the BEP a deterrent and also, as a way to restore balance?
It's gonna be a deterrent for those it's a deterrent for. Right, and then it's, just like laws. So, and that's what I'm thinking. I don't know that there's any level of BEP-ness that's going to make the $30 feel any less laws after it, you know what I mean? And so I don't know that this is supposed to do that. Remember that we're talking about what is the chance we're educating this person to do that no more. That's what this is about. So, and I'm with you with that, whatever the amount is, we're trying to make individuals understand we don't want to create this harm anymore. So, and then my question is.
A bit of an issue here, like at Opera.
It is, it's in the world too, like no one likes to have their things stolen. I don't know that there's a level in the BEP that's going to make it feel better. Or to end better, or to say, justice, my calculator's gone, I feel like I. So I'm just saying, where would we set this based upon how we feel it would help educate the person on the wrong that has happened? Versus how we will remediate the feelings within the person who had something stolen. Because I'm still mad about somebody who broke in my house and stole my jewelry box that had my 2 class rings in it from college and high school. And I don't even know who it was, and I still feel about that. So I don't know that we're gonna rectify that, but what is necessary to make them feel as though, or us to feel as though we taught them.
Shouldn't there be some language that addresses the beyond the value?
We can make
the disruption to your life. I mean, if you have your bike stolen and that's your only way to get to school,
Mhm.
that's your life is severely upended by that.
Mhm.
And, how do we take into account those
I
things?
worry about that being subjective, because
Mm-hmm.
the way that things are presented sometimes are presented as it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. So if we take that into consideration,
I'll also say, I think it's important to remember in these, especially these types of situations, in the best case scenario, there is a really effective restorative conversation. Like, to me, these are the best kinds of situations where you're able to get both parties together and the person who did the theft restores the harm and understands and hears, that changes behavior in my experience. More so than a number of days of suspension. And that's just my opinion on this, but because I feel like you can get a little caught up in like, well, 1 day or 2 day or in or out. But the real harm or the real change in learning comes from understanding the harm you caused and then repairing that harm. And that takes a lot of work, right? That takes far more work than 1 day of suspension, but this person who is stealing for whatever reason learns a lot from that too. And honestly, the person who was stolen from too, because that's, I think, how they become whole again, as much as you possibly can.
So Andrea, would you say that that's most thefts? And then there's the egregious situation where it's the kid stealing, 2 computers and it's, it's a crime and it's terrible. But most stealing in school, most incidents are, there are things that you'd expect a restorative conversation to really be the best remedy.
I don't know if Lynn and Dave, you agree. Yes, I think the hard part about theft is a lot of work goes into finding the theft and figuring it out, and very few times you actually figure it out, right? So like kids' bikes would be stolen, even their helmets would be stolen, and I would watch camera and I would do all this work, and very few times actually end up finding where they are. Now it's helpful with the electronics because you can track everything and if you're able to get it in time before the electronic device dies or whatever it is. But yes, in the most successful experience is when you're able to find a person, you're able to do the work with both parties and get them together and really hear the harm that was done.
I don't wanna rush us, because I see there's more conversation that's necessary. We also have additional items on here, but we are past our time. So I need to ask the question as to how would we recover to finish this? Knowing that we have to have this prepared for the April CAL meeting for the board. So are we to pick another day? Are we to do this by, try to do email, which I don't think is the best because you can't have conversation that way?
No.
What are our options, Lisa?
So there's, as I'm thinking here, there's a couple of options. We can reschedule. I don't think we'll have enough time to reschedule before the April CAL. And I'm talking to my two board members. My only other thing is to reschedule for the April meeting, and this is just run as an action item to the regular in April, where you guys have to discuss the vote. It won't give you guys enough time to review it, to get like we do in the CAL, but that's the only option that I could think of, and you're just probably choking that I'm saying it, but those are the only two options that I could think of. Or we could try to find a date before the CAL.
Or just go, keep going.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, can I just point out that if you get through item 8, the rest of the items are so minimal that they could even wait till next year.
We got number 9.
so definitely go and keep going, and just, it seems like the easiest option if we can wrap it up in the next 15 minutes.
I cannot keep going.
No, you can't.
I can't, yeah, I can't.
And also-
Waiting.
I also have another person that's about to leave, and she
We'll be
leave,
out of
we
order.
lost quorum,
Mhm.
so we can no longer vote. We can still discuss, but we can no longer vote.
Can we try to do an email ballot to the group, that we simply tee up the remaining things and we get yes or no votes from the whole group?
Okay, so I have a quick question. Are we done with number 8, that we can vote for number 8 right now?
Do we have?
Okay.
No? Okay. And then 9, people need to look over, because 9 would be the last one. The other things are appendix items that we were just bringing to let you know. Changes in the appendix that don't really need to be voted on, it's just. Don't do 9? No one has. I did, yes, okay. We don't have to, we can remove 9 and not. Yes. So we don't have to do 9, we can,
And the question is really whether the appendix is part of this.
discussion. I told them to put the appendix in here just because there would be changes. But it doesn't affect, like actual leveling of within the DEP.
I would kind of vote to that.
Remove the appendix.
Yes.
Okay,
I feel like we could really get into the weeds.
okay. So we can remove 9, so that means 8 would be the only thing we would need to remediate.
Finish that out, please.
So did you say email ballot?
We could, if we completed the discussion, have we?
That's why I'm asking, are we completed the discussion with number 8, or is there still more to discuss?
One thing I keep wanting to point out is that it's part of this is sometimes to have the person that's trying to, make good, pay the person. Then if they only have to pay what it's worth now, but the person's gonna have to go out and buy a new one. I question that policy of not making them pay what a new one would cost, replacement cost. I'm just bringing that up.
That's my issue with all this. If someone steals my calculators, if someone stole my kid's TI, whatever it's called, that I bought when he was a freshman, and then I have to buy him a new one as a junior, I'm still paying $129 because I'm not gonna get the back to school sale in October.
Mhm.
So like, that's my issue with these monetary values. And I also really find that theft is probably one of like the biggest problems that opioid is facing. So I guess this one, again, this one's personal to me. So I just wish that we could be a little more deterrent here in terms of, and I appreciate what you're saying. I learned something tonight, so thank you.
Also keep in mind that repayment is not a part of this leveling. Repayment is something that we're trying to work towards, but there's a possibility that the person cannot repay. So that is all contingent on them having the money to actually repay. This is only about what type of consequence, what restorative action and so if we're saying we think this should be out of school because it's just that bad, then we're saying we wanna make this at 4. So that's what we have to decide. Where do we want this to start to encompass what we're saying? It doesn't include repayment. That's part of restoration.
Required.
No, he just set the levels based off of how much the value was in terms of loss. So he was saying from $0 to $100, we could start it at a 2 in school. But if we're saying, no matter what you take, it should always start at a 3, whether it was $2 or it was $2,000, started at a 2, started at a 3. So I'm just asking, where would we want that to be if we took all values out?
Can I propose that anything under 500, we start at a 3, 500 and above, we start at a 4?
Is everybody good with that? So we would just start, we would have a 500 mark, so 500 would be what it says there, 4 or 5. And then, under 500 would be a 3 and a 4? Or just a 3? And I'm hopeful this is not happening
Steal your
again.
coffee, I mean, you know.
One question with every report, so remember, it's probably not gonna be submitted through the center process. It would still work, you'd still be allowed to choose Monday with ISR or BOLA, depending on the value of the item. The dean would be able to use the discretion.
So just strike the first line, the second one, value damage.
So 0.
Under
Zero.
500, 0 to 500 is a 3 to 4. And then the final line remains the same. Yeah. That makes sense.
So there's like 2 levels, I just wanna get clear.
Yeah, that's what's proposed.
0 to 500.
Yep.
500 and above. How do you feel about that? Cause I keep thinking about hearing you saying, this calculator gets stolen, not just once,
It's AirPods, get stolen.
AirPods.
Every one of my children have had AirPods stolen. So it's just a thing. And whether they were a year old or 2 years old, either way, I'm buying new ones, it certainly costs more than 100, right?
Yeah.
So I feel good about this.
Okay, that's what I want to hear.
Thank you.
Sorry, my question was about the possession piece. If I put you on spot, I'm sorry, if she stole something with it, I could hold it. I don't know that it's stolen. Am I still getting consequence?
Yes, it's one school. Take a little deeper on that. Oh, man.
Guilty as charged.
Okay.
When we email this group for the email, when we do the email ballot, we're just striking this first line.
Jonathan, actually, if you call for the ballot right, right now.
I think it'd be it.
Yeah.
Can we do it?
Yes.
Oh,
Another 5 seconds.
got it. Let's do it then. All right. I would like to propose that we vote on the proposed change. Failure to respect materials, property, and stealing from others also includes possession of stolen property. Value damage between $0 and $500, proposed levels 3 to 4, and value damage over 500. Felony.
Nope.
We're striking, sorry.
That's right.
Value damage over 500, proposed levels 4 to 5. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed?
Is
Ayes
that
have it.
one name?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One name.
One name.
I got it.
We will clean this up so that it gets emailed to everyone in its corrected state, okay?
Just to confirm with it striking.
What are you gonna do about it?
We're gonna,
Oh, we're striking now.
Striking 9.
Striking 9.
Okay.
skip circle work, any future agenda items? Seeing none, I move to adjourn the Culture Climate and Behavior Committee meeting at, 8:52 p.m. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you for saying all the other things about